welcome back to Conservative Cat. I so do appreciate you being here. Go ahead, smash that like button, share this out with your friends. We've got so much to get to. I'm really upset about Cracker Barrel going woke. Now, for those of you who don't know, I love Cracker Barrel. It is one of my favorite restaurants, or was one of my favorite restaurants. The Conservative Cat Show, where the biscuits are buttered with the truth, gravy is poured with liberty, and the coffee is served strong enough to make Karl Marx roll over in his grave. So we are going to be talking about Cracker Barrel. They have gone woke, and I think that they're going to go broke. We are also going to get to a few other things. DC police officer is triggering this protester. He's triggers the ever-loving mess out of this protester with one simple question, and it is definitely a sight to see. So we're going to get to that. Plus, I do want to talk about foreign trucking firms. Now, a lot of people have talked about illegal immigrants. I've talked about it here on the show with the Florida turnpike illegal U-turn where he killed 3 people. This guy, and he's facing charges. He's also facing deportation. But a lot of people aren't pointing out that it's kind of baked into the cake. The problems with the trucking industry go far deeper than just illegal immigrants behind the wheel. So we're going to be getting to that. And how our politicians let them, these foreign trucking firms, let them hack the American highways. And we're going to be getting to that. So I also want to talk about needles on demand. Illinois is slowly but surely turning our pharmacies into drug paraphernalia shops, in my opinion. There was this terrible law that Rod Blagojevich had signed in 2003, and I had no idea. But apparently you can go get hypodermic needles without a prescription at a pharmacy. Had no clue that you could go do that. Maybe you didn't know, throw it in the comment section. If you knew you could go do that. If you're 18 or older, you can literally go get needles anytime you want here in the state of Illinois. And it used to be where, in this bill that was signed recently into law, Governor J.B. Pritzker, it used to be where pharmacists could use their discretion, like their personal discretion as well. So if they thought that somebody was high or somebody was using the drug or the needle for illicit drugs, the needles, and they were buying the needles for that reason, then they could just simply deny them service. So this bill was signed into law, and a lot of Republicans voted for it. And at its core, I think that it's like, well, one, you shouldn't be mandating these pharmacies to sell anybody anything. Okay, first of all. Second of all, we gave the pharmacists discretion in their personal capacity. Now, this bill kind of was watered down. At first, it was like mandatory. You have to sell them no matter what. And then they watered it down with an amendment. And they said, well, we'll allow the pharmacists to use their healthcare discretion, their health profession, like their professional discretion. But they can't turn away just because they turn a customer away from buying a needle just because they suspect they're using it for illicit drug use. So we're going to be chatting a little bit about that because there's a lot of background to this. Like I said, there was a Rod Blagojevich law in 2003 that kind of canceled the need for a prescription. You don't have to have a prescription to go get a hypodermic needle. Hypodermic needles can be used for all kinds of things, diabetes, IVF treatment, things like that. And I just don't see why you can go into a pharmacy and get 100 needles and not prove why you need those needles. Like, you have to get a prescription for pretty much everything nowadays. I don't know. It's very bizarre to me. I feel like we're turning our pharmacies into drug paraphernalia shops slowly but surely. And the Republicans, almost all of them, didn't either vote on this in the House or a small minority of Senate Republicans voted no to this bill. Very small. But there were some Republicans, and I want you to take note of the Republicans who did vote for this bill, because I just don't get it. Like, I get the never voted. I probably wouldn't have even voted on it, if not voted no. But I probably wouldn't have voted on it because it's like we're arguing oranges when we really should be arguing apples. Like, we should get rid of this law that Rod Blagojevich had in 2003. All right, let's start with I really want to talk about this police officer because it was really, really funny. I think you guys are going to get a kick out of it. So the protests continue in DC. That is a headline that you're going to be seeing probably for the rest of your life. Because here's the thing about left-wingers. They don't get tired. I say a lot of crap about left-wingers here on the show. And I talk a lot of crap about left-wingers on the show. But one thing I will say is that they never get tired of holding blowhorns, screaming about their various grievances. The entire modern protest movement really is like this idea of social justice, and it's a broad term, social justice. And it centers on these radical ideas of social justice. So they always have like evergreen material because social justice is so broad and it spans from everything from climate change to supporting terrorists. Okay, so like it spans like from everything, like whatever the cause is that day, and it's really never an actual cause. They will always be utterly insufferable and argue for whatever the cause of the day is, their cause of the day is. And the modern protest movement is really annoying because they never die. They always fight about something, okay? And they can continue to fight about something for eternity because that's just the way the modern protest movement is. So this is interesting. The theme continues here with these left-wing protesters where they just protest everything all the time. And it continues in the nation's capital. And this was a video I pulled, I think it happened on Wednesday, where this police officer triggered this pro-Hamas protester by asking why she's wearing this kiefe. I might be saying that wrong. If you're Middle Eastern, please correct me if I'm saying that wrong, kiefe. I listened to the pronunciation before I got on, and I think I got it. But this police officer was saying that this scarf, okay, is cultural appropriation. And he was asking her why she's wearing it because it's cultural appropriation. Hey, by the way, smash that like button, share this out with your friends, subscribe to the channel if you're new here, and throw a comment in the comments section. Tell one person about Conservative Cat today. That would help out the show. And visit patriotpumpenergy.com. Get your bottle of premium pre-workout for $10 off by using promo code ConservativeCat. So let's get to the pro-Hamas protester. She's wearing this scarf, okay? And she is, of course, in all of the rage. She is an affluent white female liberal. And she is ranting and raving, and she was kind of like caught with her foot in her mouth. She was in absolute disbelief that this police officer would ask her this question, where her inconsistencies were kind of challenged in this question. So this is one of the videos that I would just like watch over and over again on repeat if I were you, because it is so wonderful to see one of these theater kids just totally get obliterated. She her whole worldview just came crashing down on her.
Appropriation by wearing a scarf that is trying to stop a genocide. You think that's appropriating a culture? Okay, in what way? How is that appropriating Palestinian culture? How is my wearing a keffiyeh appropriating Palestinian culture? Okay. You're the one who said it. You're the one who said I was appropriating Palestinian culture by wearing a keffiyeh scarf. I support Palestinians. And so I am appreciating Palestinians and agree with Palestinian people. Yeah. How is wearing a scarf given to me, in fact, by my Palestinian friends? Because I stand in solidarity against the genocide. Appropriation. Yes, you are. By wearing
a got him. Okay, so this is really funny. She goes, this Kiefa, I think I'm saying this correctly. I really want to make sure that I'm saying this correctly. Kefia. I think it's a kefia. Sorry, I am not like like when it comes to foreign names, pronunciations, I'm terrible at it. Terrible. So the officer asks her, hey, isn't this cultural appropriation? You wearing that? And she says, well, I have one Palestinian friend. How racist, right? Isn't that like a racist trope? Like, if you say, oh, I have one black friend, I have one Asian friend, my one Asian friend. I mean, like, so utterly racist. This is total cultural appropriation. So the protester here's, kind of what went down. If you didn't hear everything in that clip, the protester was like, appropriate? I'm not appropriating. And he goes, yes, you are. He goes, and then the protester says, by wearing a scarf that that's trying to stop genocide, you think that's appropriating a culture? And he says, yes, you are. Then the protester says, how is that appropriating Palestinian culture? How is my wearing the scarf appropriating Palestinian culture? You're the one who said it. You're the one who said it. You're the one who said I was appropriating Palestinian culture by wearing a scarf. And then the officer said, you're not Palestinian. Okay. She goes, I support Palestinians. I am appreciating Palestinians. And she goes, how is me wearing a scarf given to me, in fact, by my Palestinian friend? Because I stand in solidarity against the genocide. How is that appropriating? So, this is a very affluent white woman, female liberal. And I can't fathom how unbearable your average feminist is. There's no other demographic on earth that comes close to their ability to make one's ears bleed. Okay, they will always wag their finger at you, lecture you until you curl up into a little ball and beg for mercy. I cannot stand feminists. So let's pick through this because it is just the epitome of stupidity in so many ways. But in some ways, you might not immediately recognize it at first. I've got some history about the scarf, the keffiyeh, I think I'm saying that right, keffiyeh scarf. I've got some history about this scarf. And you might not realize how stupid this is on its surface until you know the history of it. So I went on a deep dive the other day. I didn't know this about the scarf, but I was kind of curious because I know Palestinians, this word is very modern word actually, and we're going to get to the root, the origin of the word Palestinian. And I know Palestinians are real people. They're really not descendants of anybody. They aren't Arabs. That this is it was a derogatory term used to call Jewish people. And I'll get to the history of that. But it was derogatory term to call Jewish people. There is actually no such thing as Palestine or Palestinians. Okay. So we'll get to all of that, putting aside that there is no genocide in Gaza, no matter how many times you've got leftist protesters or pro-Hamas terrorists screaming that, and you've got a global network of left-wing supporters claiming that. I don't care how many times you scream it. It doesn't make anything more true. How would wearing a cheap scarf help stop genocide, by the way? Okay. I know that there's no genocide going on in Gaza, but if there were genocide going on in Gaza, how would a cheap scarf that you're wearing there in the nation's capital, this protester here, how would wearing that stop any sort of genocide? Okay. Number one, it's probably the wrong question to ask because, again, these are leftist liberals, the worst demographic on the planet, a feminist particularly. And it's the wrong question to ask because that would require them to, have some logic and have some logic to their argument. And, that is something that these types of protesters never have. They just virtue signal whatever cause of the day, right? They virtue signal over whatever they're supposed to be concerned about that day. And they like ripping apart Western civilization and Western culture. Anything that they can do to protest and rip apart Western culture and civilization, they will do it. So Sometimes that means stumping for Islamic terrorists, even though those Islamic terrorists, if they were to go to the countries where those Islamic terrorists reside, they would be murdered, and instantaneously they would be murdered if they had the chance by those Islamic terrorists. Although they stumped for them, which makes no sense. If you want logical consistency, you've asked for it from the wrong group of people. This group of people are not logically consistent. They don't use logic. So the main question, the logical question, would be, hey, how does a scarf stop genocide exactly? Setting aside that genocide isn't happening in Gaza. But I can't ask that question because these people aren't logical, because they stump for Islamic terrorists who would kill them if they had a moment's chance, like a chance to kill them. They would do it in a heartbeat. These Islamic terrorists that they're stumping for. Okay, so very ironically, this officer is both right and wrong. I will say that the officer is right in that she is culturally appropriating, but he's wrong in a way that I will explain with history, okay? He's right that a privileged, activist, feminist, worst demographic ever, by the way, on the planet, is prancing around the Capitol with a keffiyeh scarf, this keffiyeh scarf, and I'm going to get to the history of this scarf in just a second. She's prancing around with this keffiyeh scarf, and she's doing exactly what he's accusing her of, which is culturally appropriating. She's borrowing another culture to feed on her savior complex. Okay. Oh, I have one Palestinian friend. It's so racist to say things like that. Oh, I do have a black friend. Oh, I do have an Asian friend. I do have a Palestinian friend. So therefore, I'm not culturally appropriating. Her whole worldview was shut down because of her inconsistencies being called out, by the way, by this officer. But the officer is wrong about this being the keffiyeh scarf. He's wrong about that being a Palestinian culture that she's stealing. Okay, so the keffiyeh has nothing to do with Palestinian culture, really. And here's why. The entire idea of Palestinian identity is not ancient. Palestinians, they don't exist. They are not an ethnicity. They are not a descendants from a group of people. It is a modern political construct. The word itself, Palestinian, is a modern political construct. Palestine is a modern political construct. And if you rewind history, in the early 20th century, excuse me, in the early 20th century, the Arabs living on that land called themselves what they were, Arabs, and they called themselves Arabs. Okay, so let's see here. I want to make sure. I'm going to take a quick break because I'm going to get into the history of this now. And I want to make sure that I got all my facts. I'm going to fact check something really quick, and then we're going to come back because I want to make sure that I get it right. But you are exactly on point. Yasser Arafat. And if I butcher these names, don't get mad at me. Just throw it in the comment section. I did some digging because I was kind of curious. I was like, I know Palestinians are not real, and the Palestine thing is totally not real, and they're not an actual people. It's not an actual country. So what culture does this keffiyeh scarf actually come from? We're going to get to that here in just a second. Smash that like button and share this out with your friends. Welcome back to Conservative Cat Clips, where we don't just purr, we roar, folks. I'm Kat, and today we are drawing a big red line between Michael Madigan's dirty politics and the CTU, the Chicago Teachers Union, because let's be real, the CTU didn't just take notes from the Madigan playbook, they copied the whole damn thing. So let's break it down. Michael Madigan, he was the king of quid pro quo. He ruled Springfield by trading favors, controlling campaigns, and rewarding loyalty with taxpayer money. Sound familiar? It should. The Chicago Teachers Union runs the same racket, just in red t-shirts and not tailored suits. CTU doesn't represent teachers. They morphed into a full-blown political machine, bankrolling candidates, running campaigns, and using your taxes, your property taxes, to demand perks for themselves. While your kids get left behind. Yes, they take your money and then they go lobby in Springfield for more perks for themselves. They take your property taxes to go do all of this. Now, in 2019 and in 2021, the CTU went on strike, not just for pay and benefits, but they went on strike and they were demanding things like rent control, affordable housing, immigration policy. They've been talking about sanctuary policies and immigration policies in their schools. They even wanted a moratorium on school closures, not because it would help their students, but because it would help their political influence, because there's been schools closing down because the enrollment is dropping. So let's talk about money and power. The CTU leadership, they poured millions into electing Brandon Johnson, the former union organizer. Okay, so he's connected. And he's the mayor of Chicago as of 2023. And guess what? Now the union's got a seat at the top table. Okay, Brandon Johnson writing policies for themselves, not the students. Okay, so the Chicago public schools, they're bleeding enrollment, struggling academically. They're facing hundreds of millions of dollars in budget deficits every single year. But the union, they just secured a massive raise and they are pushing for shorter school weeks. So this isn't about education. This is about a political payoff. And just like Madigan, the CTU, they use its war chest to fund hand-picked candidates who will go out of their way for them on school board, city council, and now thanks to Mayor Brandon Johnson, the mayor's office. And you know what that is? That's not education. It's a cartel. So let's not forget, during COVID, the CTU fought to keep kids out of school and closed, and they wanted to close schools for as long as they possibly could, even though the science said otherwise. Why? Leverage. They held your kids' education hostage so they could extract more political power. Who pays the price? Not the union bosses, not the politicians they bought. No. You did, with higher taxes, failing schools, and the kids falling behind while the adults played politics. That's what it was. This has been Conservative Cat Clips. I'm Kat, reminding you the CTU isn't just a union anymore. It's Madigan 2.0. It's corrupt, connected, and carving up your city for its own gain. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat. I so do appreciate you being here. Yes, we are talking a little bit about the history here when it comes to the keffiyeh scarf that this protester was wearing. The officer said, "You are culturally appropriating," and he's right and wrong in that she's actually culturally appropriating, but she's not culturally appropriating as far as Palestine goes or Palestinians. We know Palestine isn't real. Palestinians aren't real. So, the Arabs, they called themselves exactly what they were, Arabs, so before we took the break, I was telling you a little bit about, let me pull this up here. The Arabs and, this identity. Hang on one second. I totally messed up my facts here and now I'm all screwed up. Okay, here it is. Okay, they called themselves exactly what they were. They were called Arabs. Okay. At that same time, the word Palestinian was most often used to describe Jewish people. This was a derogatory term. Jewish people were described as Palestinian under the British Mandate. So you're going to want to stick with me because there's a lot of history there. There's a lot of background. And the shift didn't come until the 1960s when the Islamist leaders, specifically, somebody already brought him up in the comment section, Yasser Arafat, Yafet realized that they could weaponize the label Palestinian, and it gave them a powerful narrative by weaponizing this word. And it didn't really come until the 1960s when Islamist leaders like this guy, Yasser, they started using the word, and it was a powerful narrative. It was permanent refugee status, endless victimhood, and it was a rallying cry to destroy Israel. Okay, and they weaponized this word, specifically a radical Islamic leader. Yasser is his name. Okay, so the kifia, this scarf, isn't uniquely Palestinian. Okay, it traces back to actually ancient Mesopotamia. And for centuries, it was worn by the Arab world. Okay. And it only began to take on a political meaning in the 1930s during the Arab Revolt. Okay. And that's when Yasser made it iconic, Yasser made it iconic in the 70s, 60s as a symbol of his PLO movement. And that is when Western activist wears one, she isn't celebrating the deep-rooted Palestinian culture. Okay, she's actually wearing a modern political costume stitched together from propaganda. Okay, so Yasser used this label of the Palestinian as a form of propaganda until the 60s, 70s. That is when the word Palestinian started to be used in the way that it is used now. Okay, so the Bible actually gives us way more clarity over the very word Palestine. Okay, it comes from the word Philistine. Israel's ancient enemies, like Goliath, was a Philistine, right? And the Philistines weren't Arabs. Okay, they were in this region right along the coast of Canaan. Okay, they weren't Canaanites. They were in this region right along Canaan. And they fought the Israel people. We know this for centuries until God judged them. And the prophets, Jeremiah, Amos, Zephaniah, they declared that God would wipe them out. And history shows us that they did. The Philistines were these giants, right? Like Goliath. Now, the Babylonians conquered their cities, and the Philistines disappeared completely. They left behind no nation, no culture, and no descendants, the Philistines. Okay. So some Christians will say, like, they're descendants. These Arabs are descendants of Philistines. That's not exactly true. There were no descendants because God promised to pretty much wipe them out, and he did. The Babylonians conquered their cities, and the Philistines disappeared completely. Hundreds of years later, okay, fast forward to Rome. Rome crushed a Jewish revolt in AD 135. Okay, and this is when the Emperor Hadrian, okay, the Roman Emperor Hadrian renamed the land there Syria Palestina. Okay, and he deliberately named it that to mock the Jewish people. Okay, so he crushed the Jewish revolt. This hundreds of years later, he crushed the Jews. The Jews have historically been genocide, attacked. I mean, it goes all the way back to the time of the Philistines in the Bible, right? So he renamed this land that he took over in the AD 135 when he crushed the Jewish revolt, and he named it Syria Palestina. Okay, and he chose the name deliberately to mock the Jews because he was connecting the land to Israel's old enemies, Philistine. Okay, so that was an insult, and it wasn't like the Philistines still exist, or Palestinians, like the descendants of the Philistines still existed, or that they were Romans and they were mocking the Jewish people. That's how nasty they were. They, like, the insult stuck. Okay, and from there the word Palestine was entered into history. Okay, they renamed this land Syria Palestina as a joke against the Jewish people, and It was never really about reviving the Philistine culture either. It was really just about mocking the Jewish people, erasing their identity, and bringing up their old enemies of the past to really just throw it in their face after their crushing defeat in AD 135, the Romans, right? Okay, so today's so-called Palestinians are not Philistines exactly. It comes from the words Philistine or Philistine and Philistina. It's derived from that word on purpose from the Romans, like we've established. And the Arabs were actually the ones who adopted the Roman nickname, and it was repurposed in the 20th century for politics. Okay, so it was traditionally Jewish people were called Palestinians, right, as sort of an insult or a mocking term. But it was repurposed in the 20th century. And the Bible is clear the Philistines are gone because God himself judged them, okay, which means the foundation of the Palestinian identity is not God-ordained nationhood. Like, there is no Palestine. There are no Palestinians. This is a patchwork of borrowed names, borrowed symbols. So let's circle back to the protester here wearing the keffiyeh. This is actually appropriated. This isn't appropriating some ancient culture. She's just wearing a modern political prop that has been appropriated. It's a symbol from Mesopotamia. And it's tied to a Roman label. Okay. And it's wrapped in a narrative crafted in the 1960s, like I said, with Yasser Yarfet. Okay. So Yasser Yarfet was the one who kind of took the term and weaponized it and gave it a very powerful narrative: permanent refugee status, endless victimhood. It's a rallying cry. Palestinian is a rallying cry to destroy Israel. And the Islamist leader, Yasser, I'm sure knew the history here of the term Palestine, okay, and where it derived from Philistine, and how the Jews were wiped out by the Romans in AD 135. The emperor renamed the land there after taking it from the Jewish people and renamed it as mockery to the Jewish people. Like, they all knew that. And Palestinian was most often described Jews living under the British Mandate. So that's a little bit of the history there. I think it's kind of funny where, you've got this protester and she thinks that she's like wearing a Palestinian scarf. It's totally not. It's a symbol of from Mesopotamia, tied to a Roman label, wrapped in a narrative crafted in the 1960s by Yasser. Okay, so here's the biblical bottom line. You cannot build a real identity on lies and borrowed costumes. Okay, that's like building a house on sand. And Jesus said, when the storms come, it will fall with a crash. That's in Matthew 7. And that's exactly what happened here. She definitely fell with a crash because her whole worldview came crushing down when this officer pointed out that she was culturally appropriating. Little does she know she's culturally appropriating the totally not Palestinians. Palestinians aren't real. Palestine is not real. It is a word that was originally used by it's derived from Philistine, the old enemies of the Jewish people, used by the Romans to mock the Jewish people. I hope I'm making sense. I'm not like great at history, but I dug into this because I knew Palestine wasn't real. And I'm like, okay, that is not like a thing where Palestinians have like a scarf or anything like that. All right, so I'm going to take a quick break. You're listening to Conservative Cat. I've got this weird cough today. I'm going to try to get a drink of water and clear the bones out of my throat. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends. We're going to get to the trucking story where, this is shocking to me. Foreign trucking firms, what they're doing, they are hacking America's highways, and the leaders at a state level and a federal level, the politicians, are just letting them do it. And this is a national security issue at this point. And I'm bringing this up today because of the Florida CDL, California CDL license that was given to an illegal, and it caused 3 people to die. And this has been dominating the news this week. And it goes much deeper than you would think. It's not just illegals obtaining CDL license that we have to worry about. There are full-blown foreign trucking firms that are operating here and skirting regulations left and right. And I'll be right back with that. Hey, go ahead and smash that like button, share this out with your friends and family. Today we are talking about America's trucking industry. And there were some crashes in Illinois actually recently over the weekend, I believe. There was some videos circulating on social media, and it was like 3 semi trucks piled up. It was really like tragic. And I didn't see anybody had died from that crash, but it was like a pileup, and I think like 9 cars ultimately got piled up, and there were 3 semis involved. Just take a look at the recent semi here just in the state of Illinois. I mean, I can't even count it on my 2 hands how many semi-truck involved accidents that have been going on this year. It's increasing, the semi-truck involved accidents, and specifically I want to talk about one in Florida, where it was deadly. There were 3 people who died, and it's raising alarm. And people don't like to see crashes happen. It's truly tragic, and a lot of these crashes, I'm going to say, can be prevented. And really, crashes like this, like what happened with the trucker down in Florida where he was turning on the Florida Turnpike. It was an illegal U-turn. He was using the official use only U-turn on the highway. You've seen those. And a minivan just barreled into the semi-truck trailer and killed 3 people. And crashes like that, like nobody likes to see them happen. Sometimes crashes are just that. They're just accidents. And you can do everything you can to prevent them, and inevitably they're going to happen, human error. But crashes like this, where there's 3 semis piled up on the road, and there's just like semi-crash after semi-crash after semi-crash after semi-crash is happening, those things don't just happen. It's because of a broken political system, a broken system where the rules are ignored, the laws are unenforced, and the politicians are too busy raising taxes to care about your safety. Okay, so that brings me to today's story. Zach Myborg, he is a trucking company owner in Rockford, and he says that really what we've all been kind of thinking for years and whispering for years is that this industry is being gamed. A lot of people, I guess, know this. I did not until reading this article. And you guys can check it out on the Center Square. The companies are based out of Serbia, Bosnia, Croatia, Turkey, a lot of these trucking companies. Okay, so they're foreign country companies, and they're based out of there. Okay, but they open up operations and they operate here in the United States, and they recruit drivers via H-1B visa systems. Okay, so a Serbian, I think that's a Croatian, Turkian, I don't know, Bosnian. They get an H-1B visa, and then they come over here and they operate for this company that is headquartered in this foreign company or in this foreign country. Okay, so they throw an H-1B visa guy behind the wheel and then they do a couple of days orientation. The guy might not speak English, and they tell him to floor it. Go ahead. So there's all kinds of problems there. So this is like outside of the illegal immigrant issue. So in Florida, this guy was straight up illegal. Here in the country, illegally obtained a CDL in California. But it's not just that, okay, where illegals are getting CDLs, just straight up non-citizens. There is a big problem with people who are considered legal. So H-1B visas, this is a work visa. They're considered legally here in the United States, but they're gaming the system, these foreign countries, and they're skirting regulations, using and exploiting the H-1B visa system. So let's break this down because the corruption really stinks here. These companies, what they're doing with these H-1B visa drivers, they are classifying them as W-2 employees, but they're not paying them like W-2 employees. They're paying them like they're 1099 contractors, okay? And that means that they don't have to pay them health insurance, there's no labor protections, and no compliance with federal law, okay? So they're not really complying with federal law. They're kind of picky and choosing, and they're choosing to pay these people like 1099 contractors, although that they're W-2 employees. And what they're using here is the ABC test. This is something in California. And no, folks, it's not the ABCs you learned in kindergarten. This is a test that says if you're under a company control and you're doing company business and you don't run your own shop, you're an employee. Okay, so this is a test to see if you are a contract employee or an actual employee. And there's, A, B, C guidelines here. If you are under the company control, if you are doing the company's business, if you aren't running your own shop, you are an employee. And that's what the AB test is kind of for. And these companies, they pretty much laugh at that test, and they are using that test as almost a loophole to dodge the mandates under the Affordable Care Act, dodge taxes, dodge responsibilities. So they're misclassifying their drivers as like they're classifying them as W-2, but they're paying them like 1099. And then via that, because they're paying them like 1099, they're skirting health insurance. They don't have to pay health insurance to their workers, and they don't have to follow the labor protections or federal laws outlined by the Department of Labor. Okay, so the Department of Labor, where are they in all of this? Are they going after these companies because they're skirting the law and using a loophole with the ABC test? No, of course not. They are too busy, the Department of Labor, babysitting pronoun disputes. Sally from HR in the Department of Labor, she is got the wrong pronouns in her bio, right? That's what they're worried about. And they're worried about shutting down family farms and raw milk, people who are selling raw milk. And that's who they're going after, okay? The Department of Labor. Now, I hope that Donald Trump, being that we have a new administration, takes this kind of stuff seriously and cracks down on it. I'd imagine he will, because this is an issue of national security, and I'll get to why here in just a second. But it's not just the misclassification of the employees, okay, that it should make your blood boil. It's these electronic logging devices. And this one ought to make your blood boil. Federal law says drivers can only drive 11 hours a day. Okay, 70 hours a week. That's already quite a bit. That's a lot if you really think about it. 11 hours. That's a long work day. Okay. The traditional work day is 8 hours. Okay. So they're putting in way more time and they're driving. It's quite a lot of hours. Okay. And it's federally mandated. Okay. Like that drivers can only work 11 hours a day or drive for 11 hours. But with electronic logging devices, ELDs, some of these foreign outfits and these foreign companies have figured out a way to hack the system, and they're doing it remotely from their foreign countries, okay? And they're hacking into these electronic logging devices that are in the trucks, and they're erasing the hours, okay? So they trick the machine into saying that the guy's only been driving 5 hours when actually he's been driving 18, okay? So you know what that means. You've got half asleep, overworked, undertrained, non-English speaking, H-1B visa drivers piloting an 80,000 pound rig, okay, right next to your minivan. That is what's going on. This is like handing a loaded gun to someone who hasn't slept for 2 days and telling them to go run a marathon. Okay. Um, it's a recipe for disaster. Okay. So not only are they misclassifying their workers, they're saying that they're W-2 employees, they're paying them like 1099. And because they're paying them like 1099, they're skirting the ABC test, which is, you're exactly right, is supposed to be strict. But there is no enforcement going on. They're supposed to be following the ABC test, and they're kind of like using the ABC test as a way to skirt it. And because they're paying them like 1099, but they're classifying them as W-2, they're skirting the having to pay them health insurance. And that's just, and the foreign truck companies are doing that. Where they're exploiting the 1099 payment like option, okay, or contracting. They're exploiting that, and really they're supposed to be W-2 employees. But they're not paying them health insurance. They pay them like a contractor to skirt the health insurance thing. Okay, so to get back to this, super ego driver. This is Jay Spinks. He told the Center Square, quote, that he would call dispatch saying, hey, I need a break. And they told him, shut down your log and start it back up again, and you'll have a fresh clock. Okay. Like, so these companies allegedly, no, Super Ego is a trucking company. And this is according to a former driver. According to him, allegedly, the Super Ego would tell him to wipe his clock or to shut down his clock, and then they would erase the clock. And when he started back up again, he'd have a fresh clock. Folks, obviously that's wrong. That's blood on the hands of these companies who'd rather risk lives than, miss out on that productivity of drivers driving 18 hours a day. So productivity means revenue, and I'll get to why this is a national security issue in just 1 second, because they are really trying to get as much revenue as they possibly can and get as many trucks out on the road as they possibly can, these foreign companies, and I'll tell you why. Here's another dirty trick that the foreign companies are doing. They are underreporting their fleets. Okay, so they are trying to cut insurance costs by underreporting their fleets. So some of these companies, they claim that they've got 20 trucks, but really they're running maybe 200 or 300 trucks. Okay, and that's fraud. They're lying to insurance companies, and who ends up paying? You do, because in Illinois, the socialist playground that it is, and all of its depravity, it makes compliant operators subsidize the bad actors who through an unaudited insurance pool. It's basically socialized insurance for truckers, okay? So American truckers who play by the rules, they are forced to cover the cheaters who laugh all the way to the bank, okay? This is an unaudited insurance pool. They're not auditing. They're not doing their damn jobs, right, at the state level. And these people are getting insured, but they're lying. Okay, they're paying for far less insurance premiums, right, if they're reporting 20 trucks. But they actually have 200 trucks in their fleet. Okay, so it's just unfair. It's unsafe because those underreported trucks, they will get into crashes. Insurance then deny their claims. And that means the victim gets nothing, because they find out, after the truck gets into a crash, that, oh, actually your fleet is 200 over 20. We're not going to cover you. And then ultimately the victim, you of the crash, will get nothing because the insurance won't pay out because they were being fraudulent, and it's a state pool. So they're gaming the system so that way they don't have to pay high premiums. If they report that they have 20 trucks, then of course they're going to pay a lower premium than if they were to report 200 in their fleet. Families are left to pick up the pieces while the fraudsters, of course, skip town, or after a crash or something like that, and they get caught for underreporting. And it usually only happens after crashes because it's, again, an unaudited insurance pool. If they get caught after these crashes, what winds up happening, they skip down, they change the name of their company, and then they just start over. right? Um, and at the end of the day, the people who are paying are the victims of these crashes. They won't get their insurance payout. And then also, it's the compliant companies who are paying into the state pool, and they are being law-abiding citizens. And they are contributing to the pool the way they should. And then they're covering for the people who aren't paying into the pool as they should because they're underreporting their fleets. Okay, so I brought this name up earlier, Super Egos Holdings. They are actually facing a nationwide lawsuit, class action suit. I tried to get to the bottom of where this is at exactly. It's a 2022 suit, and from what I understand, it's just still an ongoing class action suit. And Super Ego isn't actually like the only trucking company named. There's multiple trucking companies named. But this company is named for misclassifying drivers, wage theft, and labor law violations. Okay, everything we talked about just now. And their legal counsel is Donald Witt and Charles Andrew Scavage. So that is according to court records. Like I said, I don't think anything's come of that class action suit. It's been a few years now at this point. But drivers like Spinks, Jay Spinks, they tell their story. They say, oh, we felt pressure to falsify our logs. We were driving unsafe hours. We were risking everything for profit. And you're wondering why these crashes are happening here in the state of Illinois and in Florida. It's so much bigger than just an illegal immigrant getting behind the wheel. It's kind of baked into the cake. And it's like the system, it's a system built on exploitation of our laws, and they're skirting all kinds of regulation, these foreign companies. Now, here's where the story goes deeper and where it starts to become like a national security issue, and the why of the story, as I like to say. Here's where the story goes from corrupt to catastrophe. Okay, so there's just basic corruption going on. Like, obviously, with these foreign companies, they're, the ELD or the electronic logging devices. They're skirting that. They're trying to skirt paying insurance to their W-2 people who should be classified as W-2 employees. By all definitions of the word, should be a W-2 employee, but they are paying them like 1099s. Therefore, they can skirt the labor laws, the federal labor laws, and the Affordable Care Acts and the demands there. Okay. Which, coming from a business perspective, I love 1099s. 1099s, all about it. You're an entrepreneur, and I'm not totally against 1099s being in the trucking industry, but here's what's going on with it. Like, by all definitions of the word and through the ABC test, they are deemed an employee, not a 1099 contractor of that company. And they're exploiting the ABC test. And they're picky and choosing how they want to classify their workers, and that's kind of not how that's supposed to go. They're avoiding paying the insurance to those truck drivers who are driving 18 hours a day for them, and they are working for the company, under the company. It's not their own business, and yet they're not getting the health insurance mandated by the Affordable Care Act, okay, or federal labor laws, or mandated by the Department of Labor. Okay, and they're skirting federal labor laws. These foreign companies particularly are doing that. So, that's corruption. They're just trying to gain as much profit as possible, as much revenue as possible. And that's corruption, okay, which happens in, like, is that really newsworthy, Kat? You have these companies who are just trying to squeeze every little bit of profit and skirting the laws as much as they possibly can. Is that really like newsworthy? Well, here's where it becomes newsworthy and where it becomes corruption to catastrophe. National security. Right now, estimates put the U.S. trucking industry, 10 to 15% of it are controlled by Serbian firms. Okay. Now think about that. What if these foreign governments start to buy up these companies? Okay. They already are controlled out of Serbia. Okay. We know that these countries are not like America. They're not constitutional republics. They're communist type, authoritarian type countries. Perhaps they let these countries go full reign, give them, the leash and loosen the leash a little bit. Hey, make as much revenue as possible. And then they do. And then they wind up, controlling 10 to 15% of the trucking industry, okay? 10 to 15% of the US trucking is controlled by Serbian firms. What happens if these foreign governments start buying up more of these companies? What if it becomes 30%, 40%, and our supply chain is controlled by mostly overseas actors, as it is now? Now it's under this facade. Now, I mean, you can say that they're a private company all you want, but it's Serbia, right? And it's operated out of Serbia. Is it really a private company that's operated out of a country like Serbia or Croatia or something like that? Okay. Now, all they have to do is shut the trucks down. Okay. So, say like a lot of our US trucking industry is all Serbia firms or all Croatia firms or all Turkey firms. Right? Turkey has an alliance with, I believe, Iran. What if they all band together and they say, well, let's shut this down? America grinds to a halt. Grocery stores are empty. Gas stations run dry. Hospitals miss their shipments. This is not just bad for business, but it's an act of war without firing a shot. So do you see what's happening here? It's not just that illegal aliens are hopping the border and they're trying to get into a truck and, make money. It is a tactical ploy that these foreign companies and foreign countries, it's pretty much simonious, okay? These foreign countries are doing in order to infiltrate the U.S. Like, if I wanted to control a company or a country, how am I going to do it? I'm going to infiltrate their surface transportation, right? And all of this is happening, and it feels like Washington has been yawning. I know under the Biden administration, they were yawning. The Department of Transportation is shrugging their shoulders. Biden was more worried about building EV chargers, EV stations or whatever, than securing the trucks that are currently on the roads, delivering our food, our fuel, and our medicine, and making sure that they're domestic, and that they have domestic interests at heart, and they're not foreign terrorists, who are sleepers. They're controlling the U.S. and they're getting as much as they possibly can, and trying to control the U.S. Trucking industry and gain as much ground there as they possibly can. And then boom, all of a sudden they get the word, and then they shut down and they stop operating. And then we don't have our grocery store, or our groceries in our grocery stores, and our drugs in our drugstores, and our gas stations are empty. I mean, if I wanted to take down a country, I had to infiltrate their trucking system. And shame on the state agencies, shame on the federal agencies who are letting these companies just skirt by all these regulations. You have to apply the law equally. And I get it, some of these laws suck. Some of the laws, the Affordable Care Act and what we mandate on companies kind of suck, but you have to apply the law equally. And it seems like they're letting these foreign companies just get away with this. And it's scary. It should terrify you. This is probably one of the most concerning national security issues that faces America today, outside of, terrorism, or, this is really concerning stuff. And I hope that, and I'm sure this is on Donald Trump's radar, but I haven't heard him address this. And I think it's interesting, Ron DeSantis, after that whole thing happened in Florida with this illegal alien getting behind the wheel and obtaining a CDL. And, these people, the H-1B visa people, through these, where it's kind of like all legal, it's all legitimate on its surface, but where it starts to get illegitimate is when they start skirting the regulations and doing this in order to gain as much power and revenue and control over the U.S. trucking industry as they possibly can in a short amount of time. I feel like they're planning something big, these companies, and some by proxy countries. It's interesting, Ron DeSantis, he says we have to hold the company accountable. After that happened, he issued a press release and he says, yes, the CDL in California, like, this is terrible. How could these sanctuary policies are deadly? That's what he said. But then he said, we have to hold the company accountable. So we have to shut down these companies who are exploiting our laws, skirting regulation in order to get a leg up, fair and be unfair, and take over really the U.S. trucking industry. So Proverbs 11:1, I cite this verse all the time. False balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is to his delight. These companies use false balances. They lie about their hours. They lie about insurance. They lie about their workers. They misclassify their workers. And the regulators just look the other way, you know? And I hate to say this, but who's looking the other way? And is it treasonous? What's the intention here of looking away? Do we have actors in these state agencies and federal agencies who are looking away? They're just as guilty for looking away, by the way, and not holding their feet to the fire. And do we have treasonous assholes? Sorry, excuse my French, but do we have them in our government? And do they want to see America destroyed? Because that's where my head starts to go. Who is in the government who's treasonous and is looking the other way on purpose and allowing these companies to get a leg up over U.S. companies and allowing them to have this kind of control? So we as Christians, we have to defend the truth. We have to protect the innocent, and we have to stand against deceit. When a system allows corruption to flourish, you're going to have families dying on highways. You're going to have workers who are being exploited. And these H-1B visa people are being exploited. It's not their fault. They're told, hey, get in this truck, go. Right. And they're coming from these terrible countries where they have no freedom of speech, no freedom of religion. And they're just trying to, make $30,000 to $40,000 a year, whereas they were making $300 a month, or $300 a year. They were working for pennies over in this country, and they're told, hey, we're going to put you in a truck and we're going to have you run it for 18 hours a day. And we're going to, scrub your ELDs. And if you allow this corruption to flourish, this is not just bad policy. It's sinful and it's anti-American, really at the core of it. So where do we go from here? First, we have to enforce the laws we already have on the books. We don't need more regulations or anything like that or another bill. We just need honest enforcement. Second, we got to stop allowing foreign carriers to exploit our visa system. So these H-1B visa workers, they're told to get in the truck, and they're not told the laws of this country, obviously, that, hey, we have electronic logging devices that say you can only work 11 hours a day. We have, a system where if you're a W-2, you have to have employee benefits, right? There's Affordable Care Act mandates, there's federal law mandates that you have to abide by. Like, they're not informed of that, and they're being exploited. And these foreign carriers, they are exploiting our visa system, and it's all due to weak oversight. Third, we have to protect our American truckers. So we have to put an emphasis on American truckers and American trucking companies. And we have to stop hurting them, the men and women who are actually doing the job and doing it correctly. They're paying their taxes, and they're keeping the shelves stocked. And they're all doing everything by the book. We have to start uplifting those people in the industry and condemning the people who aren't playing by the rules. So this deadly crash is not going to be the last event in Florida. Okay. Next, it could be your town. It could be your family. It could be your community. And this is what happens when America forgets to put America first. Okay. And our leaders need to wake up. The people need to demand the truth, and we need to stand for safety, sovereignty, and sanity on our highways. All right, folks, I'm going to take a quick break. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends. Oh boy. Serbia is mostly a Christian country, but there is a significant Islamic population. Are the Serbian trucking companies owned by Islamists? Yeah. Well, so there is a significant Islamic population, so I'd imagine that this is an adversary of ours, okay, who are doing this, who are coming and creating these companies and exploiting the H-1B visa system, skirting the regulations, erasing electronic logging device hours. They're not our friends, right? So it could be the Islamists. I don't know. I'm not in the industry. You know, this guy was a Sikh in Florida. Now, he was an illegal immigrant who obtained a CDL, and shame on California for looking the other way when it came to giving a non-citizen, somebody who quite literally has no citizenship status, where it's not even a work visa that this guy was on. They gave him they gave him a CDL without even being a citizen, from what I understand in California. He was just here illegally. So, yeah, he entered the country illegally. His work visa was denied by the Trump administration, this guy Singh in Florida. And then later there was what is it called? EAD, Employment Authorization Document, that was issued to him in 2021 by the Biden administration. So maybe he was like on a work visa, I guess, but like wrongfully obtained or inappropriately obtained, because we all know what the Biden administration was doing. He was handing out work visas and asylum claims to every Tom, Dick, and Harry, right? So those were inappropriately dished out, and they weren't following federal immigration law or policing immigration at all. The Biden administration, it was open border, and they gave that all out like candy. Okay, so he might have even been like technically in the state legally and given like some sort of work visa and then obtained the CDL. But I mean, there should totally be like non-English speaking like requirements and things like that. There was no reason why California should have issued that guy a CDL. But it goes so much deeper than just, you're going to hear the pandering. And I don't want to pander on the show like, those non-English speakers, how dare they, get behind the wheel of a truck. I mean, to be honest with you, do we really need to speak English like fluently? I mean, you have to read it, you have to understand road signs to get behind the wheel of a truck and drive. No, I don't think that you need to be completely proficient. I would love for everybody to be proficient in English here. I think that should be a citizenship requirement. But I know that that's not reality, and I know that that's not going to happen. If I was president, maybe. But the real problem is that we have state agencies and federal agencies who are not policing the current laws that are on the books. And that is what's really scary. All right. Got to take a quick break, but we're going to come back and we're going to talk about needles. Yay! Needles! No. This is really kind of sad. Needles on demand. Illinois is turning our pharmacies into drug paraphernalia shops. And this has been decades in the making, where you can go in any kind of pharmacy, and I can go in today, an 18-year-old, somebody who just freshly graduates high school, can go in and grab 100 needles without any kind of prescription or reason, and they can go, and the pharmacist has to give it to them. I will be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Hey, you're listening to the Conservative Cat Clips. This is the place where we don't call 911 first. Nope, we pray, we prepare, and yes, we pack heat. Every time there's a tragedy, the media and the Democrats, they start crying, do something, and do something. And what they mean is more laws, more bans, and more restrictions, not on criminals, mind you, but on law-abiding citizens. So let me tell you what evil doesn't care about. They don't care about legislation. The man willing to break the 6th commandment, thou shalt not murder, doesn't blink twice at your AR-15 ban. Okay, he doesn't read your gun-free zone signs. He sees those signs and he says, this is an invitation for me. Gun control doesn't stop evil. It disarms good people. The founding fathers didn't give us the Second Amendment so we could go hunting. They gave us the Second Amendment to protect ourselves against tyrants, both foreign and domestic. And newsflash, tyrants don't tend to announce themselves. They come wearing smiles and waving around fancy policies. And I also want to talk about self-defense today. Self-defense. The average police response time in big cities like Chicago could be up to 10 minutes, sometimes even longer. I know the Chicago PD is really struggling with that. Response times in rural areas, it could get up to even 30 minutes response time. So if somebody kicks down your door, are you going to ask them to wait until the government sends backup to protect you, or are you going to protect your family and take matters into your own hands? So grandma, okay, in Peoria, Illinois, she is just trying to defend her property, but yet she's the one treated like a criminal. She has to go through all kinds of crazy background checks, permits, training. And the thug in Chicago, he gets the gun out of his trunk in an alley, and he didn't think twice about our laws, okay? It's about power. It always has been. Every dictatorship in history has disarmed their citizens first. First, that's Stalin, that's Hitler, that's Mao. They didn't want competition. And once the guns were gone, so were the rights, the freedom, and the people. So a disarmed people is a controlled people. But an armed, faithful, and free people, that is a nightmare for tyrants. And really, it's a blessing to your neighbors if you are armed. The Second Amendment isn't outdated. It's eternal. And just like evil, just like our right, just like the evil has the right to do evil things, and that they will, we have the right to resist evil and to arm ourselves. And the Second Amendment is pretty dang clear, shall not be infringed. This has been Conservative Cat Clips. Hey, go ahead and smash that like button. Sorry, I was researching a little bit about AB 5, which is a bill that pretty much like enhances, from what I understand, the ABC test. Yes, it is a California thing. So what these companies do, they will be headquartered in, say, something like Serbia, but their like operation is out of California, and like their business licenses and stuff like that are out of California. But they're like Serbian firms, okay? And then from there, what they do, they are really W-2 employees, but but they're paying them like 1099s, and they're kind of like double dipping. And from what I understand, that's what's going on in the trucking industry, as far as like the Californian companies, like Californian companies, but they're actually Serbian firms, okay? But they're operating, I guess, out of California. And then they exploit the ABC because of this, like, because California is one of the only states with something like an ABC test. They go there and they can exploit that law, that provision, and make it to where they don't have to pay these truckers full time, who are working full time and aren't really like their actual W-2 employees. They aren't really like 1099s, but they don't have to pay them, insurance or abide by mandates under the Affordable Care Act, whereas everybody else in the world would have to do that, or everybody else in the country would have to do that. It just seems like these foreign carriers are getting a pass, and they're exploiting it, and they're exploiting really these H-1B visa workers who they're recruiting to get behind the wheel of the truck. And it's just all the way around. Like here in Illinois, AB 5 in California implemented in January 2020. Saw the article in Center Square. Please remember, Illinois-based truckers are not subject to ABC tests like California-based truckers are. Yeah, so in Illinois, the Illinois-based truckers, they're exploiting different aspects of regulation. So, for example, the state insurance pool here in the state of Illinois, they're going to figure out what to exploit to gain maximum revenue state by state, and it's all based on what state they're based in. But point of it is that they're foreign carriers, and they are using laws to their advantage to squeeze as much profit as possible in order to gain control of the U.S. trucking industry and gain a big slice of that pie. So yeah, I mean, it's just all the way around tragic, because it's a national security issue. And I hope that Trump and I haven't really talked about or seen Donald Trump talking about this, or like the DOT, the Department of Transportation, Sean Duffy talking too much about this. But it seems like a really big issue. And you would think that this would take kind of center stage, especially considering what just happened in Florida. And I researched it. I mean, within the last couple of months, there were like 20 semi-truck accidents, like almost deadly, if not fatal, semi-truck accidents within the last couple of months here in the state of Illinois on our highways. So it was a lot. I do want to talk about the needles. So let's get to that. This is the Conservative Cat Show. Subscribe while you're here. Share this out with your friends, and be sure to buy your bottle of premium pre-workout today. It's patriotpumpenergy.com. Use the promo code ConservativeCat at checkout. That is the best promo code out there. You get $10 off, and this is really good stuff. It's an alternative to an energy drink. No artificial colors or dyes, and we don't try to pump you full of sugar and caffeine. A lot of the energy drinks, even the pre-workouts, have one, artificial dyes, two, crazy amounts of caffeine. Like some of these pre-workouts, I'm like 300, 250 milligrams of caffeine. I'm like, why? You people are psychos. Why would you do that? We pair ours with a little bit of black pepper extract to get that caffeine to last a little bit longer. And it's a great supplement. Okay, so today's headline: Governor J.B. Pritzker signed 2589. This is a bill, became law, and it forces pharmacists to sell sterile hypodermic needles. These are needles that go under your skin, and they can be used for all kinds of things like diabetes, IVF treatments, things like that. But these pharmacists are going to be forced to sell these to anyone 18 or older. No questions asked, no discretion allowed, really. Now, it was watered down. So this is how it kind of goes sometimes in the state house. And this is how Republicans justify voting for it. Now, I won't name names, although I could. I won't. But 2589, just go look it up for yourself. Click on votes, and then you'll be able to see what Republicans voted for it in the House. There was a handful of Republicans who never voted for it, which I would probably vote no if I was there, but never voting on it also takes a position, because it's like there's no fixing this, okay? Because it's been decades in the making. It went to hell in a handbasket back in 2003. Which I'll get to here in just a second. But so it was watered down from the original bill, which said no questions asked. You always have to sell sterile needles. No discretion is allowed. They watered it down with the House Amendment 1 in this bill, and you guys can read it, where they did allow the pharmacist some health profession discretion. So from a health standpoint, you can deny somebody the sale of, or deny somebody these needles. So I don't know what that would look like. I'm not a pharmacist or a health person, but it used to be before somebody comes in high asking for needles, you could deny them. Now you have to justify it. This is a mandate from a health professional standpoint. Why you denied that person 100 needles. By the way, this bill allows for people to go in and buy 100 needles at a time. Step right up. 100 needles. You need it? You need 100 needles? Illinois has got you covered. Now, so you can have health-guided discretion, essentially, over this if you're a pharmacist. But you can't just have regular discretion. So it changes the language in the bill. The law used to be the Hypodermic Sterile Needles Bill Act. It was changed. It changes the language from may to shall. So when that happens, that's a mandate. So pharmacists may sell hypodermic needles to anybody 18 or older at their discretion. Now it changes it to pharmacists shall sell hypodermic needles using health-guided discretion. So it's a slightly different form of discretion, I guess. I don't know. Really, I call this a state enabler program. And nothing says family first values like making it easier for drug dealers to stock up on supplies, right? So, this law, one simple word, it replaces it from may to shall. And that means that they have no choice really in the matter. Like I said, they do have that health guided discretion still, and they amended the bill what it was originally introduced as, to include that health guided language. Um, but if somebody asks for a bag of needles, you have to sell it to them, essentially. Okay, under this bill, Governor J.B. Pritzker and his cheerleaders, they of course say that this is all about safety, about preventing HIV and other diseases, hepatitis, and they argue it's compassionate. Let's be real, compassion without responsibility is not compassion at all. This is cowardice dressed up in virtue signaling. Okay, this is the way I look at the bill. Okay, now to be fair, love Kimberly Earling. She's quoted. She said ran for the 40th Senate district. 40th Senate district is where I'm from. So the 40th Senate district, Patrick Joyce. Okay, that is where this district is, and it is a known like heroin, methamphetamine is actually becoming a problem according to Earling. This is really, really sad. And to be fair, this bill probably will save lives. We've gotten to a point in this country and really in this state and in these rural communities where like we're being very reactive policy wise. We're creating overdose prevention sites where you can legally go shoot up under supervision, under state supervision. We're getting to a point where we're selling Narcan, and I was at the laundromat the other day, and there was Narcan in a vending machine. Okay, it's getting really creepy, almost dystopian. Okay, where we're having to be reactive because it's gotten so bad. Okay, and Kimberly Earling, her daughter died. I actually knew her a little bit from high school, and she died too soon. So tragic. And I'm not questioning any kind of pain. But the reality is that these dirty needles, they're spreading like disease. And if we just make needles easier to get, there's just going to be way more needles in circulation. That's the way I view this. The government wants to make it easier to feed addiction rather than treating it. That is just the core of government. They love you addicted to anything, gambling, sports betting, marijuana. They love when you're addicted because you don't cause any issues for them if you are sedated and if you are addicted. Okay. And really getting more needles out there in circulation because an addict is going to use no matter what. Okay. An addict is going to use if the needle is dirty or if the needle is clean. Okay, they're not thinking about the cleanliness of their needle before they're using. That is not how an addict thinks. Okay, so what's going to wind up happening, the people who are not addicted, the drug dealers, the people who are circulating these drugs, they're going to go into these pharmacies. They're going to purchase the needles, the people who aren't addicted, and then they're going to throw more needles out there in circulation, and more people are going to die of hepatitis C, HIV, AIDS, by sharing needles. I think that this is just going to create a problem where there's going to be more needles in circulation, period. Okay. An addict is not going to go into a pharmacy and say, like, I would prefer using clean needles when I'm shooting my heroin. That is not how an addict works. They will just grab needles from their friends, and it's really sad. And really, this is like putting Band-Aids on bullet holes, our approach to the opioid crisis, heroin. We're putting Band-Aids on bullet holes, and we're calling it healthcare. Okay. So the Bible is very clear in Proverbs 14:12. There's a way that seems right to a man, but in the end, it leads to death. Okay. So needle giveaways might feel compassionate right now because we, are saying, oh, more clean needles are going to be made accessible to these drug addicts. The drug addicts aren't going to go into the pharmacy and grab the needles. They won't. And it might feel compassionate because you've made that available. But in reality, what's going to wind up happening are the drug dealers who might be clean actually themselves. They're going to go get the needles and they're going to just throw them out in circulation. And then they're going to be shared. And then more people are going to die. We really need to put a prescription on these things. Okay. We need to limit the needles that are out there in circulation. And in the end, this is not compassionate. This is paving the road for addiction. This is going to lead to more broken families, more people dying. And it's truly sad. So State Representative Chuck Capello is a law enforcement officer. He said it best. He said, I don't know, it's common sense. You shouldn't be able to walk into a pharmacy, grab 100 needles, and not show proof of medical use. Like, hey, I have a disease. I have diabetes. I have something that requires a hypodermic needle. Here's my prescription. Okay. You should have a prescription, insulin needles or whatever. Now, you're going to have people go in there, and I don't think it's going to be the actual addicts themselves. I think it's going to be the people who are at the top, or friends of addicts, and they're going to be putting those needles out in circulation. They're going to get dirty after one use, obviously, and then they're going to be passing it to their friends and their friends and their friends, and we're just throwing more needles out in circulation. Congratulations, Illinois is your new supplier, okay, essentially, of your needles. If you want 100 needles to shoot up heroin or fentanyl, Illinois is now your new supplier, and they're throwing so many needles out there in circulation with this bill. And this has been going on for decades, so it's not anything new, which is probably why some Republicans never voted on the measure, I'd imagine. I'm going to pretend like that's why they never voted on the measure. Because why vote on something that is like you're arguing apples, but really you should argue oranges, because we're so far from the oranges argument. We can't even have that argument anymore. Like, that is where we're at. And that's why a lot of Republicans justify their votes, their crappy votes, because they say, well, we're not even really arguing what we're supposed to be arguing. So I never voted on it, or I just voted yes because it's better than what we've got, and with that amendment where they said, oh, well, now we're going to allow the pharmacist some health guided discretion. I'd imagine some Republicans said to themselves, oh, well, thank God that they met us on the middle on this, like, no, this sucks all the way around, and you should vote no on it just because it's terrible to begin with. Okay. I don't care how much the Democrats compromised. You shouldn't vote yes just because the Democrats compromised a little bit. So Cabello suggested that requiring a prescription for a large quantity, that's just common sense. But apparently common sense is extinct in Springfield, and Democrats, they killed and buried prescriptions for hypodermic needles long before, pretty much almost before I was alive. So Illinois started down this road back in 2003 when Governor Rod Blagojevich, who signed Senate Bill 880, removing prescription requirements for needles. Yes, this is the same Rod Blagojevich who went to prison for corruption, by the way, and this is a guy who sold Senate seats, and Illinois lawmakers said, yeah, you know what, let's trust him on a drug policy. Let's just continue with this same policy, and let's take it a step further, and let's make it to where pharmacists can't use their personal discretion when selling these hypodermic needles. So fast forward 20 years, and now Governor J.B. Pritzker finishes what Blagojevich started. Step by step, Illinois moves from prevention to enablement. And really, it's from prevention to reaction, like reactive, okay? We're acting reactively via policy to the heroin epidemic, okay, and to the drug crisis. And we wonder why overdose keep going. Not voting is voting. Yeah. I would have issued a no vote, but they probably didn't vote on this because, like I said, Republicans, what will happen is a bill gets watered down. So like it starts out really crazy. And this is what the Democrat tactic is all the time. And it's really quite fascinating. They start out with something outlandish. So those overdose and prevention centers, they actually started out with like several of them, multiple of them. And then they watered it down. And the DHS is the state agency that's going to oversee one overdose prevention center. So then you had some Republicans who were like, yeah, I'll vote for that because they went from multiple overdose prevention sites. And by overdose prevention sites, I mean places where you can legally go shoot up heroin under state supervision, the IDHS, which, by the way, has a sub agency, DCFS, and we all know how abysmal DCFS is. So, do you really trust the IDHS when it comes to administering and facilitating drug use? Yeah, I don't think so. So we wonder why the overdose deaths keep ticking up. Where does this lead us as far as a Christian worldview? We need to step back and ask ourselves, what does Scripture say about all of this? So 1 Corinthians 6:19, Paul reminds us, your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. Addiction destroys that temple. The state says, here, take another needle, and Christ says, no, come to me, all that are weary and all that are burdened, and I will give you rest. So real compassion doesn't enable sin. Real compassion confronts it, heals it, redeems it. That is real compassion. And if our lawmakers really gave a damn, and Earling actually pointed this out, ran against Patrick Joyce, they need to invest in like detox treatments and programs and like figure out how to get faith-based recovery programs out there, and then also mandate drug users to do a like at least week-long, month-long detox in the hospital. Okay. We need to stop treating them like oh yeah, you overdose. No, this is like an attempt on your life, and we need to lock you down because it's a mental illness. Once you use heroin once, it alters your brain chemistry for the rest of your life, and it's a mental illness at that point. And I hate to say this, but you have to lock those people up. Okay, and they are a danger to not only themselves but others. You have to either lock them up. Prison might not be the place for them, but why doesn't the state invest in something like a, detox treatment where you are locked down in this hospital and you are detoxing under, the provision of healthcare professionals? I just can't get behind the state-sponsored drug use. I really can't. And I know what is going on, out there, and we're all being really reactive to it. Like Narcan, and making sure we have Narcan on hand, and making sure everybody's using clean needles, and making sure that there's an overdose prevention site. I just can't personally, it feels wrong to me. It just doesn't seem right to me. I think that the options that I'm talking about don't line the pockets of big pharma and big government. So there's actually these like methadone clinics where people will go, and it's all state sponsored, all government sponsored, and that's all big pharma. Once you get off drugs, if you're able to get off drugs, you can go and switch to a brand new drug called methadone, and you go week by week, and you take the methadone, which is really, really sad, and it benefits big pharma, of course. Selling as many needles as you possibly can benefits big pharma and big government. And the solutions I'm talking about would fix a person for life, a faith-based recovery program, institutionalizing somebody. We should take every overdose as a not just a 24-hour hold, but like a week hold, and we should take that as like a suicide attempt, an overdose. And we need to stop treating overdoses it's a stomach bug, or we'll treat you for the overdose and then we'll release you. No, this was an attempt on your life. We should treat it like a suicide and put you on a hold. And I think that hold should be a week, 2 weeks. I don't know how long it really takes to detox from drugs. So picture this. You walk into a CVS in Chicago. One side, you've got diapers and formula. The other side, you've got Narcan and hypodermic needles. Courtesy of Governor J.B. Pritzker. I mean, welcome to Illinois, the only state where your tax dollars get you potholes, high gas prices, and now you've got government approved, government, not coming up next, it's going to be government subsidized. Now, if you are an addict and you want hypodermic needles, there's going to be a government program out there for you to go get clean needles. I guarantee that's what's coming next, and it's going to be paid for by your tax dollars, where these people can go and not even use their own money, but go into a pharmacy and use taxpayer dollars to pay for it. I bet that's what's coming down the line next. So Springfield politicians, they keep telling you that they're going to protect families and protect families. Like, come on, my ass. Okay, they're protecting their reelection campaigns. They're pandering to these activists, and there's a lot of like, they call them harm reduction activists or harm reduction groups, and they take the ideology. A lot of people have adopted this ideology that we should be more reactive to the opioid crisis rather than preventative. Okay, so there's drug prevention groups. That was DARE. Remember DARE in high school? Those were drug prevention groups. Notice how those have quietly kind of like been phased out of high schools. I thought that they were pretty effective, right? Because they took the ideology prevention, like, hey, what can we do to prevent somebody getting hooked on drugs? That initial like use of heroin, what can we do to stop somebody from using heroin once? What can we do to stop that? Keeping needles out of their hands by requiring prescriptions, right, to get the hypodermic needles. Advocating for, say no to drugs always. Now there's this ideology that has surfaced that says, well, somebody trying heroin once is inevitable and we're just going to have to react to it. And those are those activists. Okay, they go out there and they say, well, we have to react and we have to make sure they're in a safe environment, and it's going to happen because that's the reality. We just have to make sure that they don't die. And that is just the wrong ideology to have. You have to try to, because heroin alters the mind from the very beginning, just trying it once, you have to prevent that first encounter with heroin and do everything you can to prevent it and make it really, really hard to access it. And quite frankly, scare the bejeebus out of somebody from ever using it. Reasons why I would never use drugs. One, DARE scared the bejesus out of me. This is your this is your brain on drugs, or this is your brain off drugs. This is your brain on drugs. And they share this with like a second grader, and I'm like, and I'm traumatized by that. And part of this is like punishing the bad actors, punishing the drug dealers, people who are pushing this out in large quantities. We need to lock those people up and throw away the key. And scaring the bejeebus out of somebody for using or dealing heroin. That is another part of that. Punishment is also a part of this. So we've got to talk reality. You make needles easier to get. You create black markets. So like I said, dealers are going to go into these pharmacies. They're not necessarily the addicts. These are the bad actors. These are the people who have the intention of making money off of the opioid crisis, okay? They're going to go into these pharmacies. They're going to buy these hypodermic needles. And then they're in the hands of these dealers. And then they throw them into the hands of these addicts. And then the addicts throw them into the hands of the addicts of the addicts of the addicts. And then addicts discard them on the playground. And children stumble across them. They're discarded on the playgrounds, the parks, the bathrooms, the public parks. This isn't compassion. I mean, this is chaos. You're throwing needles out there in mass circulation. So I've interviewed law enforcement officers, and they say some of the hardest things that they have to deal with is responding to overdoses and the sheer number of used needles littered in the streets. So they see these kind of things all the time. First responders, parks, recreation crews, they see needles in the streets all the time, the alleys. With this law, you're only going to get that problem to be worse, people picking up needles off of the street. So I don't think that this is actually going to provide access for clean needles. It's just going to throw more needles out there in circulation and more dirty needles thereby out there in circulation. So Springfield, I guess, pat yourself on the back. Your neighborhood is going to wind up becoming a testing ground for their social experiments that they're doing there in Springfield. It's just so disgusting. And I want you to note this and write this down. Republicans in both chambers, they barely fought this. Okay. And I get it. It's kind of like watered down policy, and like it's already kind of a thing. And it was a thing in 2003 where they don't require prescriptions. And I get it. But like, where's your backbone, man? Stand for the families. Really. Stand for law enforcement. Stand for communities drowning in these drug crises. Um, and I say that there's way too many Republicans in there that are Republicans in name only. They're scared of the media. They're scared of being called uncompassionate. And they think that just because something gets watered down or because the Democrats give a little bit, that they have to vote yes on something. Folks, compassion is not handing out needles, hundreds of needles, to an individual without a prescription. Compassion is helping them get clean, get free, and get them back to their families. Okay, so 2589, not about compassion, it's about enabling families, churches, communities. We need to step up where the state is failing. We need to build networks of hope, not highways of heroin. And because the government says yes to needles, we need to say yes to Christ, to truth, to healing, to real healing. So, yeah, I do want to shift gears. Let's talk about the Texas Democrats. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends. Not voting is voting. They need to bring DARE back, yes, into schools. Stop enabling and condoning drug use. Yeah. So DARE is one of those prevention groups. Like I said, prevention groups are very taboo in Illinois nowadays. They have not a whole lot of seats at the lobbying. And back in my day, back when DARE was a thing, these prevention groups, a lot of them faith-based, would take Springfield by storm. Now, this is when I say like the church is sleeping. A lot of these prevention groups, they were faith-based or church-based, like they came from a church or like a group of people in a church started an organization, and then they went to go lobby Springfield. They were so big back in the day, like in their heyday. I would have loved to have seen it. Now what has taken Springfield by storm are these harm reduction groups. And part of that might be that these prevention groups, they start to realize, oh shoot, we can't make money. You know, these harm reduction groups, a lot of these lobbyists, they get pats on the back from Big Pharma, obviously, because everything that they advocate for helps Big Pharma. It ultimately became about money. So back in their heyday, I would have loved to seen the prevention groups taking Springfield by storm. And we need to bring DARE back. Yeah, we have to stop enabling and condoning drug use. Yeah. And I don't think that a lot of people think of it as condoning or enabling. I think that a lot of people think of it as like, I have to react. Like the opioid crisis has gotten so out of hand, we have to react to it rather than prevent it. Okay. And they think that prevention is so far off or like impossible. I don't know about you, but DARE was pretty effective for me. And I think that the moment that they took DARE out of schools, that's when we really started to see in my hometown an uptick in overdoses and an uptick in drug use. So, the GOP is just afraid to say no. Just say no. Yes. Remember, just say no. Yeah. If I was in Springfield, I'm telling you right now, if I was a legislator, I would vote no on every single bill just out of freaking principle. There's no reason to be crafting any more laws. We have way too many of them. Let's get to the Texas House Democrats, shall we? They, of course, we know that they had this effort to stall the vote. Texas House Democrats, they fled to the state of Illinois, and they fled their home state to break quorum. Okay, so you guys know this story. They did this for about 2 weeks. They went back on Monday. They tried to claim that they won by raising awareness. You can't claim victory, man. You lost. The Republican pressure, whether it be the fines, the arrests, warrants, all of that, you ultimately came back because of the Republican pressure. So they slinked back to their little hidey holes in Texas on Monday of this week. Ultimately, the Texas Democrats, they could not hold off the inevitable. They were going to lose. They lost in the House. They tried to amend the bill multiple times. They tried to do like all kinds of tactics, like point of personal privileges and things like that to try to stall the vote. But the inevitable happened. They were defeated 88 to 52. Let's take a look and listen.
Occurs on passage to engrossment of House Bill 4. This is a record vote. Clerk, ring the bell. Serves 100 voting aye. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? 88 ayes, 52 nays. House Bill 4 passes to engrossment. Members, it is the intent of the chair to adjourn. All remains in place and the doors remain locked. Mr. Guerin moves to the House. All right, you see. Occurs on passage to.
So there you have it. I do want to share this. This is another clip from the State House there in Texas. This is what happens when Republicans actually unite, something that we don't really understand here in the state of Illinois. This is what happens when Republicans come together, hold strong, and stay true to their principles. Take a look here. Oopsie. I just messed that up. Yeah, Illinois would never. We are too disorganized. We don't have a united message. We're constantly voting against each other. Like I said, actually, yesterday, I couldn't believe this. The Senate Republicans voted for those mandatory mental health screenings in the state of Illinois. Every single Senate Republican did that. Take a look here. United. This is what a united Republican state house looks like. There's a huge contrast with, of course, Illinois. I do want to share Cory Booker. Sorry in advance. The bill goes to the Texas Senate, by the way. The vote is expected. The vote is expected to be today, to be held today in the Senate. Now, if it's passed in the Senate, which it's expected to pass, it'll go to Texas Governor Greg Abbott. He's going to sign it. And the plan here is that this new redistricting is going to add 5 seats to the U.S. House. And that is going to drive Democrats crazy. That is driving Democrats crazy. Of course, Governor Gavin Newsom has already responded with redistricting action to try to help Democrats, sort of an act of retaliation. There was another moment of drama on the day. The Texas Democratic State Representative Nicole Collier, who had stayed in the chamber since Monday, tried to join a video call, with California Governor Gavin Newsom and other Democrats from the state capitol bathroom while the districting bill was being debated. So on Monday, she stayed there in the chamber. And she tried to do a video call from the bathroom, but she had to duck out of the call because they started to tell her that, hey, making a call is a felony. A video calling from the floor or the bathroom is a felony while you guys are in session. So let's watch Cory Booker. He talks about this, Representative Collier in the bathroom, and how, there's so much dignity and how Collier is like, a fighter of democracy or whatever. Let's take a listen. Here we go.
And all of our Democratic elected officials.
Sorry, I have to leave. They said it's a felony for me to do this. Apparently, I can't be on the floor or in the bathroom. Well, you told me I was only allowed to be here in the bathroom. No, hang on. Bye, everybody. I've got to go.
Hey, that is outrageous.
Come on.
And first of all, let me tell you something. Representative Collier in the bathroom has more dignity than Donald Trump in the Oval Office.
There you go.
That is outrageous. What they're trying to do right there is silence an American leader, silence a Black woman. And that is outrageous. And I hope everybody took note of that. The fact that she can't even let her voice be heard is freaking outrageous.
It is.
And this is what we're fighting for here. This is ultimately what this is about. What we just witnessed, them trying to shut her down and say it's illegal for her to be in the bathroom and on this call. This is the lengths that they're going to in Texas to try to bring about a system so unjust and so unjustifiable that they are going to try to silence those leaders from being heard and speaking out.
There's Cory Booker. So she was like on this video call, I guess, with a bunch of Democrats. Senator Cory Booker from New Jersey, and he was losing his mind. He goes, "This is outrageous," and he said that Collier had more dignity than President Donald Trump in the Oval Office. And she was on the phone with, of course, Gavin Newsom, other Democrats from the bathroom, I guess, talking about the vote. I don't know. I mean, it was just so stupid. I mean, Cory Booker is throwing a tantrum there. Because, yeah, definitely more dignified. Yeah, nothing says dignity than calling your Democrat colleagues from a bathroom. This was performative nonsense. And, I love how they're melting down down there. I love that they're so upset that they lost, and it is glorious to see. They might have already held the vote. I don't know. I got to double check that, but it is passed. Oh, yeah, here we go. They did pass it. I thought that they were going to take the vote up today. They did. Oh, wait, no. This is the transgender one. Sorry. I get my bill numbers mixed up. Members of the Texas Senate hold a hearing. I'm looking at this in real time. I don't think that they've heard it yet. This was 4 hours ago, and they were supposed to hold a hearing about the map. I'd imagine that they're going to try to draw this out as much as possible, similar to what they did in the House, where they did like all kinds of like shady stuff, where they were like, let's call a point of personal privilege. Let's delay the vote. Let's amend it. Let's amend it and do all these crazy things. They do these stalling tactics. So I'm just happy that it's going to pass and that Governor Abbott is going to sign it. And it is so glorious to see when the Democrats lose. Okay, earlier we were talking about the DARE program. When I was in school, that was a thing. For a little while, it actually stopped probably when I was in like 4th grade, 5th grade, something around there. They stopped doing DARE, which was like a big mistake. They also stopped doing the presidential fitness test while I was in school. So I want to talk about this today, kind of a fun little way to end the show. It's creeping in. Let's see. The MAHA is creeping in, and I absolutely love it. That this is creeping into our culture and the culture war we are winning. Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy hilariously accepted a MAHA fitness gauntlet that was thrown down by the heads of the Department of Defense and the Department of Health and Human Services. He was on Fox News, Sean Duffy, and he was on with a host, Fox News host, The Will Cain Show, and the host had announced that they both had accepted the Pete and Bobby challenge. So Bobby being RFK Jr., so Pete being the Secretary of DOD, Pete Hegseth. And the challenge here, it entails 100 push-ups, 50 pull-ups, all under 10 minutes. Okay. So this is a pretty intense challenge. Let me share this with you. It's really kind of cool. And President Donald Trump brought back the presidential fitness test, which I wanted to share with you. But take a listen to Sean Duffy. I'm just so glad that there's testosterone back in the White House and back in government. Take a look.
Hey, Bobby and Pete, I got the challenge. Now listen, you both have a lot more time to work out than I do. You have one job, I have two. But I accept the challenge because it's not just DOD and Health and Human Services that should be healthy. It's the president's cabinet, it's DOT, it's NASA, it's all of government, all of America. So I'm down here in Texas. I was at Johnson Space Center yesterday. Today I'm here at American Airlines. But that means Texas, Will Cain, the two of us at the gym tomorrow. We're going to bring it. Stay tuned.
He's so cool. Why are they so cool? Bobby, RFK Jr., Pete Hegseth, they're all kind of just really cool. So here's Will Cain and Sean Duffy actually taking on the Pete and Bobby challenge. I want to share this with you. Here we go. Let's see here. There you go.
Mr. Secretary of Defense, Mr. Secretary of Health and Human Services. your challenge has been accepted. The Pete and Bobby challenge, Will Kane, along with the Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy.
So I broke my shoulder.
Oh, here we go, the excuses.
The excuses. Before we start, doctor said no pull-ups or no push-ups, but I'm going to do it because of the challenge.
All right, let's do this. The Pete and Bobby challenge.
Giddy up. You got the clock going? Oh, look at that. That's easy.
Let's go, Duffy. Squeeze them out.
And again, I get a break because I have 2 jobs. They have 1.
It's true. It's true.
But good, Will. See, those are real push-ups.
He's going to have coffee as he does his challenge.
I'm more than halfway through.
I'm done. I've been done. Boom. Take that, Set Def.
Boom, baby.
What you got, Set Def?
This is just so adorable. It's so funny. So at one point, Duffy, he talks about how he has 2 jobs. So he is the Secretary of Transportation and the acting NASA administrator, while RFK Jr. and Pete Hegseth, they only have like 1 job. So Pete Hegseth, Defense Secretary, and then you've got the HHS Secretary, RFK Jr. Duffy announced that he was more than halfway through, and then Kane stepped in to help him finish his pull-ups. So Kane announced that he completed the challenge, and you were supposed to complete it in 10 minutes. They completed the challenge. Kane did at 5:12. That's funny. And this, of course, came after the Transportation Secretary announced the day before that he accepted the challenge. Earlier in the week, Hegseth and RFK Jr. made headlines when a video surfaced of them doing the fitness challenge. Okay, in the video, the Secretary of Defense, he's 45 years old, by the way, Pete Hegseth. He dominated the challenge undertaken at the Pentagon. He finished at 5:25, right? And at the ripe old age of 71, RFK Jr., this was very impressive. He comes in at 5:48. I mean, come on, man. And he was doing it in jeans. I don't know if you guys saw this, but RFK Jr. did the fitness challenge in jeans. I don't know who works out in jeans. Hats off to you, because that's really hard to do. Let's take a look here. Here we go.
All right, here we are in the bowels of the Pentagon for the Pete and Bobby challenge. I think this was your idea, so I blame you. But it's all about make America healthy again. We're going to be fit, not fat. We want recruits that are ready to go and challenge. What are we doing today, Bobby?
Well, Pete and I are going to do our part, encourage American youth to do this challenge. And the challenge is to do 100 push-ups and 50 pull-ups in any order you want in under 10 minutes.
So 5 minutes is the top standard that we want to meet.
You're not going to be able to do that.
So impressive. I'm sorry, but like still can't wrap my head around the fact that RFK Jr. is 71 years old and he completed that challenge in 5 minutes and 48 seconds. Full disclosure, I am a legs person. I don't really work out my upper body. I got like little chicken wings here. I don't work out my upper body. I can't do a pull-up or a push-up. It has always been my goal, and I will get there. I swear, I'm going to get there. I just haven't got there yet. I've never really been able to do a push-up or pull-up. I'm your classic like runner. I like to run, and I do squats. I've got a butt for days, but I don't have any arm strength. Okay, and legs. I've got killer quads, but I can't do arms. So I don't think I'd be able to complete this challenge. I don't even think I'd be able to start the challenge. But maybe I will. Maybe it has inspired me to do this challenge. RFK, if he can do it at 71, hell, I can do it, right? So it was 100 push-ups and 50 pull-ups in under 10 minutes. And they did it in like 5. So he did it, RFK Jr., 71 years of age, 5:48, which is insane. So President Donald Trump, the reason why I brought this up today is because, they're challenging the youth. This is a really cool thing. It's just so cool to see like Joe Biden would never. Kamala Harris would never. It's cool to see that you have these administration officials out there participating and inspiring our young men and women to be healthy. So President Donald Trump has made good on his campaign promises as far as making America healthy again. During a recent White House event, Donald Trump signed an executive order that reestablishes the presidential fitness test and award for children. It also reestablishes the President's Council on Sports. This was introduced in 1966 and, of course, discontinued by President Barack Obama during his time in office. And, you got Michelle Obama, remember her whole, like, kids eat healthy thing, which was total bogus. It was really expensive and it didn't work, and none of the kids really liked the food. And a lot of it was like this processed crap, and it was all built up the food pyramid. And the food pyramid really just sucked. It was like 90s health that she had put out there, like, make sure you eat like 5 bowls of Cheerios a day for your heart to be healthy. The hell? Okay. So that was their idea of health, eliminating the presidential fitness test. And then, of course, which I think included the pacer, which I was always really good at. And I couldn't do a pull-up, but there was an alternative for girls. You could use flex arm hang, where you would like hold yourself up at the bar. I tried to cheat, or chin arm or chin hang or something like that, and I would put my chin on the bar like this, and I'd try to cheat because I really like couldn't hold myself up there. I hated upper body. Anything to do with upper body I can't stand. I'm just so weak. But this is a wonderful tradition. We're bringing it back. This is what President Donald Trump said, of the fitness challenge and the test public schools on their kids and health. They test the kids on their health and athleticism. I don't know about you, but they took all this stuff away right when in 2008. So I was 8 years old. So they took it all away. And I'm starting to realize that, my generation and the generations after me, they have no idea what actual health and athleticism and like how to work out. They don't know any idea how to do it. And it's probably because we took away that presidential fitness test under Barack Obama, because he's jackwagon, in my opinion. So he goes, I was always a person who loved playing sports. I was always good at sports. This is what President Donald Trump said, when you are really focused on sports, you've thought about nothing else. I think I'm getting this to an extent. This is one of the reasons why I like golf. You get away for a couple of hours. Yeah. So what Donald Trump, I think, is saying there is like, when you're doing sports, it's hard to do this like whole victim status thing that has been really like popular lately, where kids, like, they're so caught up in their feels and their identity and their clothes and like what their hair looks like. And it's because they're not really focusing on sports. Like when I was in school, and I noticed the transition probably like when I was in school, from, hey, sports, to like, how do you feel? Why don't you join the theater? You know what I mean? And, when you're focused on sports, it's like this physical focus that you have to have. And it keeps your thoughts off of, me. And you're just physically taxing your body. And that's all you can think about is like, hey, how am I going to get through this workout? And you're not so self-absorbed. And I love the presidential fitness test. We need to bring back the presidential fitness test. We did. Hopefully DARE is next. I remember when Arnold was the face of the presidential, Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm not sure. He was the face of the presidential fitness agenda. That's pretty funny. I didn't know that. That's pretty cool. Teens today have strong thumbs because of texting. Yeah, I like that comment. Thank you, Bob, for joining. Beneath RFK's RFK's Muscle Beach and shirtless strength training last year, when he was running for her. President of the United States. Yeah. So I remember all of that when he was running for president of the United States. He was doing like the arm push-ups and things like that. I'm just so glad that like he backed, like without RFK's backing, I don't think that Donald Trump would have gotten the presidency. That was just so huge. That was the moment I think that President Donald Trump actually won the election. I mean, the assassination attempt. Yeah. But RFK joining forces with President Donald Trump, and he clearly is made for this role. Like, I really believe that God has a calling for RFK Jr. and that this was his calling to be HHS secretary and make America healthy again. So yeah, should I accept that challenge? Are you going to accept the challenge? 100 push-ups and 50 pull-ups, I think it is, under 10 minutes. Can you do it? Throw it in the comment section. And folks, that's going to do it for us today. I appreciate you being here. Share this out with your friends. Subscribe to the channel. And we will be back tomorrow morning, bright and early, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Bye-bye. Be blessed.